John McCain is one American politician who has been around longer than almost any other, and because of that has had tremendous influence in the United States on world events at large. I think it's immensely important to study people with such great power who have such terrible ideas and cause so much evil. Investigate his actions and legacy and try to determine some of the reasons he acted like this. John McCain is known as one of the most avid supporters of war and intervention in the United States today, and has supported intervention in foreign military conflicts nearly every chance he's had. To start with, it's important to note that he came from a military family where both his father and grandfather were four-star admirals in the United States Navy. As is typical with many military families, his childhood was probably not ideal. The fact that he comes from such a prestigious military family definitely has a lot to do with why he is so interested in the military. He was coming of age, he became a ground attack aviator, essentially flying fighter planes to attack targets directly on the ground. During his time in training, he crashed his plane twice, once colliding with power lines. He never received serious injuries here, but nevertheless was regarded as a careless and reckless flyer. The lack of regard for his own life here is at least indicative of a lack of regard for human life in general, something very common among very accomplished military and government people. Soon after marrying his first wife and adopting two of her former children and indeed having another child with her, he requested combat assignment in Vietnam. Again, it is worth noting how here he favored his profession over his family. In 1967, he was assigned to the USS Forrestal and positioned in the Gulf of Tonkin. Here he participated in Operation Rolling Thunder, a bombing campaign which killed at least 183,000 civilians. Quoted as saying, "In all candor, we thought our civilian commanders were complete idiots who didn't have the least notion of what it takes to win the war." The first instance we see of McCain's desire to win any war at any cost. During a fire on the USS Forrestal, he escaped his jet, was hit by shrapnel in his legs and chest. This fire killed 134 people and took over 24 hours to get under control. After escaping this tragedy, he was ready to go back into the fray. While flying his 23rd bombing mission over North Vietnam, he was shot down by a missile. He broke several bones while ejecting, almost drowned when he landed in a lake. As he was captured by North Vietnamese soldiers, he was bayoneted. He was taken to the most infamous North Vietnamese prisoner of war camp, known as the Hanoi Hilton. Though he was severely wounded, he was very frequently beaten and interrogated. Once the North Vietnamese learned of his father's status as a high-ranking admiral, which he held at the current time, he was given some medical care and spent 6 weeks in the hospital. During this time, he had lost 50 pounds and his hair had turned white, although prisoner inmates expected him to die within a week. Strong men who undergo this kind of treatment demonstrate psychopathic tendencies after the event, even if they weren't like this before. This experience had a similar effect on McCain. At this point, his father was commander of all U.S. forces in Vietnam, and he received rope bindings and beatings every 2 hours, even though he had dysentery. He attempted suicide but was stopped by the guards. When he finally gave in and made an anti-American confession, still received 2 to 3 beatings per week. Previously, he had refused early repatriation, a propaganda move by the North Vietnamese. He was released in early 1973. He spent 5.5 years in this prison camp and was permanently incapacitated, unable to lift his arms over his head. An experience like this breaks even the best of men and turns them into shells of what they formerly were. Especially among many Vietnam veterans, it leads to a tendency toward violence and sociopathy. When he returned home, he found that his wife Carol had been in a car accident in which she was also severely incapacitated. He left her soon after to participate in a flight training squadron in Florida, and by 1976 he was the commanding officer of that squadron. We see this obsession with achievement, lack of regard for family. This is something very, very often seen in high-achieving political and military people. Power is an extremely addicting drug. At this point, he became involved in extramarital affairs and was the Navy liaison to the U.S. Senate. At this point, he gained funding for a new U.S. supercarrier against the wishes of the Carter administration. He left his wife for an Arizona school teacher. For many years, did not reconcile with his children from that marriage. He also left the Navy during this time because he felt he was unlikely to be promoted. Again, obsession with career. Several important dignitaries and businessmen through his father-in-law's beer company, he was elected to Congress in 1980. He always supported Reagan's military expansion, supported the funding of the Contras in the Nicaraguan Revolution, which killed at least 50,000, supported the Mujahideen in a conflict that, to date, has killed at least 2,200,000, left 7 million people as refugees or displaced people, and at least 3 million civilians wounded. The United States government's funding of UNITA in the Angolan Civil War, which has killed at least 500,000 civilians, supported the bombing of Libya the first time. It may seem obvious he was a member of the House Armed Services Committee. In the 1990s, he supported NATO bombing Yugoslavia, which killed at least 6,000 people, and criticized Bill Clinton for not doing enough in that time. He supported the war in Iraq, which has killed at least 600,000 people in violent deaths, 500,000 people in terms of sanctions, and has left more than 120,000 wounded. He also supported Bush's invasion of Afghanistan. He also supported the 2007 troop surge, which sent an additional 20,000 American troops to Iraq. Again, we can see his obsession with winning a war at any cost with this quote: "I would much rather lose a campaign than a war." During Obama's administration, his jingoism did not halt. He supported the proliferation of missiles in Poland, was a vocal supporter of intervention in Libya, defended Huma Abedin, who was accused of having ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, argued strongly for military intervention in Syria. He supported intervention against ISIS, supported Ukrainian protesters in 2013, and supports the ongoing Saudi war in Yemen. Believe that he has donated personally to the Saudi Arabian state to support this effort. This war has killed at least 4,000 people as well. So here are the grand totals for casualties caused as a result of McCain's endorsement, support for, or direct participation in wars or campaigns. At least 4,028,727 dead, 7 million as refugees, and at least 3,117,000 wounded. Just in terms of deaths alone, it is analogous to McCain killing 59% of his home state of Arizona, more than 1 in every 100 people in the United States, or the entire nation of Liberia. If you sum the dead, people left as refugees or wounded, that John McCain is at least in part responsible for, that is equivalent to him having nearly a fifth of 1% of the entire world population. Blood is on John McCain's hands. Shame should be on him as well. He is an evil man responsible for the suffering of many, and there are many like him. It is important to understand how these people operate and why they do so. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to share it, and use these links here if you want to check out my Twitter, Gab.ai, or Steemit accounts. Government is evil, and voluntaryism is the solution.